Do you ever wonder about those little towns you drive through that are just a dot on the map? Places that not many know much about? What made them? What broke them? What could still haunt them? Well, we're going to dive a little deeper into that. I'm your host, Doc Steph, and welcome to Rural Doc Hop. Our next stop on Rural Doc Hop brings us to the small town just down the road from our family farm and where I spend most Wednesdays at the walk-in clinic. Warsaw, Ohio, with a population of 648, is situated along the Wahunding River at the crossroads of Ohio State Route 60 and 36. It is found in Jefferson Township in Coshocton County, northwest of our last stop of Roscoe Village. In 1800, President John Adams granted 4,000 acres to William Simmons for his service as a colonel during the Revolutionary War. William Simmons' daughter, Josephine, married William Carhart, a general in the War of 1812, and they built their first home, the first structure in present-day Warsaw. William Carhart found the town of Warsaw by platting 32 lots on his homestead in 1834. Land surrounding the initial 4,000-acre land grant were other government land grants to soldiers and government-owned plots. Construction of the Wahunding Canal in 1840 brought grist mills and sawmills to the area along the canal, and in 1845 a wood frame hotel was erected. The Wahunding Canal was a feeder canal from the feeder dam in Cavallo to Roscoe along the Wahunding River for a full 25 miles. The canal brought textile trade, grain, and wool to and from Warsaw. Between Warsaw and Roscoe was a slackwater crossing at 6 Mile Dam crossing the Wahunding River. Slackwater crossings were used when canals needed to cross larger rivers. 6 Mile Dam was a low-head-style dam, 304 feet long and 4.5 feet above the low water level. It was made from a timber crib construction with rock filling between the timbers and had a woven wooden walkway over this. Only half of the structure was able to be anchored to solid bedrock. The other half was built on a layer of sunken trees with stringer boards in which the cribbing could be attached. The dam allowed for an area of slower flowing water, and canal boats would load their draw team and pull across the calmer water of the slackwater to the canal opening at the other side of the river. There are some legends about the canal within the region. In Warsaw itself, during its heyday, there were up to 7 taverns along one side of the river. Men were said to get quite rowdy and loud, and many fights would break out in the taverns. A covered bridge across the river and then a pivot bridge over the canal led from the taverns to the made commercial district. One night it is said that an older gentleman had been drinking and caught the attention of a local group of younger hooligans on his way across the canal, and the younger boys pivoted the canal bridge and the older gentleman fell in with a yell. Luckily, no one was hurt by this prank. Another legend has it that at 6 Mile Dam, the Eliza Jane, captained by Edmund Hicks, went to cross during a high water event. He lost control of the boat and jumped ship. His wife stayed aboard and rowed over 6 Mile Dam into the river below, steering the boat downriver to the Roscoe Basin where they could re-enter the canal. By the 1880s, 2 railways crossed in Warsaw: the Dresden branch of the Cleveland, Akron, and Columbus Railway and the Wahunding branch of the Toledo, Wahunding Valley, and Ohio Railway. These trains transported coal from eastern Ohio to Toledo. With the age of the steam engine, the canal was made obsolete, and by 1892, the last canal boat had passed through Warsaw. By the late 1800s, Warsaw had 2 mills, 2 dry goods stores which sold flour, sugar, and other staples, along with clothing, groceries, grain, and wool, a blacksmith, a carpenter joiner, stock dealers, and many farmers. By 1906, Warsaw Wire Fence Company and a branch factory of the Farmers Cooperative Harvester Machine Company were found in Warsaw. In 1904, the old 1845 frame hotel was bought and then demolished by Dr. Wright, and a new 16-room hotel, hospital, sanitarium was erected. What's the difference between an asylum and a sanitarium? Many people get the two confused. An asylum was particularly for the mentally ill, while a sanitarium was used for long-term illness recovery and health restoration. Many were used during the late 1800s to early 1900s for those suffering from tuberculosis. The new building, made out of ornamental concrete blocks in the late 19th and early 20th century American style, and it had locally sourced hardwood floors, a grand staircase with turned balusters and wooden inserts, and gas and electric light fixtures. Dr. Wright was known to do surgeries, including appendectomies and tumor removals, in this hospital. Local legend has it that the first C-section in the state was done in Warsaw by a traveling surgeon who rode in on the train, performed the surgery, and left the very next day. This building was then sold to Dr. Hahn in 1917, where it remained a boarding house, apartments, and an office. Dr. Leopold rented the office in the building from 1933 to 1973, and since then the space has been occupied by rentals, barbershops, and meeting rooms. It is now listed on the National Historic Register. Currently, it houses the Wahunding Valley Historical Society Museum, which showcases local history. Hauntings abound for such a small village. Hotel Warsaw is said to be haunted. Locals have felt the presence of unforeseen forces, heard footsteps, and had doors open and close on their own. Most do not get an ill feeling from these haunts and feel they are just checking in to see what's all new at this over a century-old building. Another local haunt included the sighting of a ghostly apparition outside of a teen's bedroom window off of Spring Mountain Road of a woman in white who was crying and wringing her hands. A woman in white haunting is a very common type of haunt and are typically seen in more rural areas throughout the world. Typically, these can be associated with a form of tragedy, either unrequited love, accidental death, or murder. All are tied together with a form of loss. A small abandoned wooden house just past the intersection of 60 and 36 is also said to be haunted, but this one depicts a woman in black. She was said to be murdered by her husband in a drunken rage, and people driving past the house have reported smelling burning flesh and the screams of a woman. Just a few miles further west from Warsaw lies the small village of Nellie. Most recent census data shows Nellie has just 122 residents. Nellie has its start in the early pioneer days. It was established sometime in the late 1700s, with the first recorded inhabitants being William Darling and Sophia Sidwickski, who were said to have come from Virginia with 12 children, driving a team of horses and a wagon over the Appalachian Mountains to reach what would become Nellie. The Darling family helped to contribute to the village's establishment and growth early on. Founded along the Wahunding River, this area had a natural draw for settlers and continues to be a draw for locals who wish to float down the river or visit the close-by Mohawk Dam just upriver, which was built in 1930 for flood control. Why do I bring up Nellie, you ask? Well, Murder Ridge, a local legend and serial killer, Cletus Reese, lived on a farm just north of Nellie. Cletus P. Reese grew up in a farming family. His mother passed away when he was only 5 years old due to complications from diabetes, and then at that time, his half-sister Ethel tried her best to step into the motherly role. When younger, Cletus was said to have been very strong and a good physical laborer. Some say that his strength outpaced anyone of his build, and he was able to do things he shouldn't have been able to do, including picking up a hog under each arm or being able to pull cattle without having to tie them down. As a young man, he was said to have been very shy and kept to himself, but as he got older, more issues seemed to arise with his mental health. He was seen to have conversations with himself or an invisible companion and have flares of temper while drinking, which he did regularly. When his draft number came up in World War II, he was rejected without any further comment despite his good physical condition. It was not uncommon that in the middle of the night he was found out hunting with his dogs and would cross in front of startled motorists. The death of his father happened in 1942, and he seemed to get even worse after this. After the death of his father, his other siblings put the farm in Ethel's name, and he stayed on to run it, which they hoped would help stabilize him. But instead, he slowly became more volatile, and in 1951, the family had him committed to the Ohio State Hospital in Cambridge, where he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. On a report from his hospital stay, he had shown some alarming tendencies, including sudden temper outbursts and occasional delusions, believing himself to be a policeman or with the FBI. He was later released home on a trial run, and within a few months, the original family farmhouse burnt to the ground. In November 1953, one Lester Mellick, who was a farmhand just down the road from the Reese farm, went to a bar in Danville where he met up with Cletus Reese, and he was never seen again after that night. Cletus was questioned, denied any knowledge of Lester's whereabouts. On June 2nd of 54, Cletus called the Hafner Truck and Equipment Company in Coshocton, wanting to try out a new Hudson, which his sister knew he could not afford, but figured it would not be an issue for him to do a test drive. Clyde Patton, a part-time car salesman and full-time teacher with multiple children at home, brought the car down for Cletus to test drive. When Ethel came by the farm, she noted that the Hudson was still at the farm that night, but she thought that Clyde had just left this for Cletus to test drive longer and must have had someone come pick him up. Meanwhile, Clyde's wife called the sheriff when he didn't come home that night, but the sheriff refused to do anything about it until 24 hours had passed. On June 4th, the sheriff arrived at Reese's family farm to question Cletus. Cletus gave permission to search the house and grounds. He slowly gave more inconsistent answers and became more nervous. Clyde's wife was brought to the farm and she identified multiple pieces of her husband's personal property within Reese's bedroom. At that time, 100 people started searching the house and barns, and multiple journalists joined the actual investigators. A discovery was made on the second day where a bloody trail from a field several hundred yards behind the farmhouse to a plowed field 100 feet away behind the barn. In this area, they found the battered body of Clyde Patton face down and only partially covered. Of note, Clyde's head had been crushed to a pulp, according to the coroner. After Clyde's body was found, Cletus was noted to have said that this had been going on for a long time to the sheriff and showed no evidence of guilt or emotion when discussing this. He was then placed under arrest for this murder. While Cletus was in custody, the sheriff from Knox County came down to question him as well, and at one point Reese suddenly blurted out that he shot Malik in the head while they were in a car and broke down. But the next day he denied the story completely. While the searches were still underway, Lester's son became part of the search party and discovered an area of grass. It looked slightly discolored compared to the surrounding grass. Deputies dug up the area and found a body, and to everyone's shock, it was not Lester's body. The body was of a younger, smaller man that was very badly deteriorated, and the skull had been broken, almost completely in two. It was found that the body had been buried for at least a year by a pathologist. Over 600 volunteers then began searching the farm for Lester's body, and it was found across the road from the house, but no evidence of a gunshot wound was found. He had been beaten in the head as well. Cletus told the sheriff that they would not find any more, that 3 was all the bodies that were there. Further formal searches of the grounds of the farm have not been done since then, and there are no current plans for further investigation. It is said that if other victims had been placed in the shallow graves, that the multiple years of farming would have broken down their remains, and ground-penetrating radar likely would not be useful for further evaluation. Reese was formally charged on June 12th at the Stockton County Courthouse for the murder of Clyde Patton, where he refused to enter any plea at all and remained silent for the proceedings. He went through further questioning about the other 2 bodies that were found on the farm. He stated that the unidentified body was his old Cambridge State Hospital friend Paul Tisch, who showed up at the farm 16 days after walking away from the asylum. Reese said that he killed him on Christmas Eve in 1952 and buried his body soon afterwards in a shallow grave. After further questioning, he began to give fictional information about how he had killed Tisch, and then stated that it was not Tisch, that it had been some soldier which he had a difference in theology with. During his questioning and confession, he complained about soldiers running his farm and killing people, thus explaining the murders that were done, in which he considered them self-defense. At several times, he even stated that he had done the killings on instructions from U.S. First Lady Bess Truman, President Harry Truman's wife. Multiple other sheriff's officers questioned Reese about other missing persons from the area that made no progress, and many times Clyde would just keep his head hung down throughout the questioning. One such meeting was with Police Chief A.E. Jones from Newark in Licking County, who drove up to show him a photograph of Peter Meistrate, who had been missing since 1948. Cletus is said to have taken one glance at the photo and then shrunk back and refused to say anything at all. Cletus was sent to the state hospital for formal evaluation of insanity, and after a month of observation, it was noted that he used many coin words and his stream of thought was disconnected and delusional. He believed he had a mission to perform because of his fantasy employment with the FBI. Due to this, on August 1954, he was declared unfit for trial and sentenced to return to the Lima State Hospital. He passed away there in May 1966 at age 48 of a heart attack. Rumors started spreading that over the years Cletus had been collecting stranded motorists from the highway, killing them, and tearing apart their cars to sell for scrap and parts. This legend has then revolved to include that he cannibalized their flesh as well. It's unknown at the time if more of the men who went missing in central Ohio in the late 1940s and early 1950s were actually runaways or murder victims, as their bodies were never found. So what do you think? Would you visit and learn more about a small dot on the map? Would you look into the history of an unknown small town, the area it was founded and thrived, and what caused its decay over time? Or would you even dare to hunt for the ghosts that haunt the area? Stay tuned to Rural Doc Hop for more small town history and lore. Thank you for lending your ear. I also want to put a special thank you to the Wahunding Valley Historical Society for some of this information in this podcast. I'm Doc Steph, signing off for now.